Working It Out, a podcast show about diversity, equity, and inclusion in our workplaces, our communities, and our lives. A show where we put diversity and inclusion to work.
Got problems on the job, we're working it out. Workplace got you stressing, we're working it out. Yeah, we're working it out, working it out, working it out. Dr. V.
Welcome, I'm Dr. Vanessa Weaver. Today on Working It Out, we're delving into the personal story of an accomplished professional who has overcome adversity. It's not uncommon for professionals of color to face discrimination, bias, or some other potentially career stalling or limiting experiences during their professional journey. My guest today is going to share his story, including how he faced his challenges and how those experiences have shaped who he has become and will continue becoming. Joining me today on Working It Out is Jemel McWilliams. Jemel is a creative director, artistic director, choreographer, dancer, and actor. I mean, he is a multi-talented individual. And not only does he have expertise in all of those roles, but he's worked with people like, or his clients, not worked with, but these are his clients, are Lizzo, Alicia Keys, John Legend, Janelle Monae, Kelly Rowland, Nick Jonas, and Tracy Ellis Ross. And not only that, he's worked for some of the biggest corporations like Nike, like PepsiCo, like Coca-Cola, and many more. And the other interesting factoid about Jemel is that he was nominated for an Emmy in 2020 for the outstanding choreography for variety or reality programming for the Oscars. And that was that opening sequence routine with Janelle Monae called Come Alive. And I remember we were just like, it was like incredible. And Jemel, one of the interesting elements that we've seen in this during our podcast is that for those individuals that have been in the entertainment industry, particularly the men, they've either been in accounting or marketing or some kind of specialty that uses the left and the right brain, right? And yeah. The same for you. You went to Drexel University, one of the top universities in Philadelphia, and you got a degree in both marketing and management information systems. Now, how technical can you be on that? That's IT to the bone, right? And yet you went to New York, you got a job in corporate America, and what happened there? What happened?
Man, well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Weaver, for having me today and letting me just talk to you about just my experience. I'm a wild and crazy creative guy. And it took me going to college. It took me thinking that, following what I originally was seeing as the money, right, versus following my heart. It took me jumping into corporate America to realize none of that was fulfilling for me. And what fulfilled me was when I was at the open mics at night until 3, 4 a.m. And when I was just around music and dance and art, that was what fulfilled me and made me feel like my fullest self. So eventually I jumped out of that corporate world. No offense to anybody in corporate. It just wasn't my calling. And I just followed my heart. And here we are today. Your boy is out here Emmy nominated.
That's an amazing story. Not only did you leave corporate America, which is the dream for many people just to be able to get into the door, but you decided you were going to go to Hollywood. You're in LA, in Hollywood, and make your mark. And how many people make a decision to go to Hollywood and they kind of go to Hollywood, but not a lot happens after they get to Hollywood? And I can only imagine that your friends and family must have wondered, has he lost his mind?
Well, I think most of my family and friends knew that I just lost my mind a long time ago.
Okay.
So at that point, I think it's just like, hey, Jemel is a guy who always just follows his heart. And it got to the point where once everyone, including my parents, realized this is the son that's absolutely going to do what he wants to do. Let's just pray for him, hope for the best. And, you know, so I think eventually everybody understood that that's just, I'm a flighty, airy creative, and that's just how you're going to get the best out of me. So here we are.
And they loved you through it, right? You got that.
And they loved me through it,
right?
and I appreciate it. Yes, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Yes, Dr. Weaver, they loved me through it. And I think that's one of the most rewarding things with my family was that I did grow up with a family that supported me and my dreams, even when we saw it differently. Like maybe I had family members guiding me, saying, follow the money first and then go follow your dreams or whatever. It just wasn't me. And so I had to follow me and follow my heart. And then that's led me to where I am. And out of New York, I moved to LA, California, and voila.
And the voila is a big voila, right? That's with a capital V. That you went to LA and you nailed it. Tell me about how did you make that transition and what did it take and what adversities did you face?
Oh man, so actually before jumping out here to LA, that transition happened in New York. So I was, you know, facing the first adversity, I would say, was facing myself, facing like the internal questioning of, am I following my heart, which is super insecure, there's no stability to it, or am I staying in corporate space where, yes, I've spent over $100,000 in higher education, bills, and all of that. Do I follow that? It's secure and then try. So in that moment in New York was when I had my first moment of self-reflection. It was like, Jemel, follow your heart. So I stopped corporate work in New York and started teaching after-school dance as a part-time job. So Dr. Weaver, I'm literally going from a secure job to I am working 2 hours a day, but it was something that was fulfilling. I'm teaching hip hop dance to my community, to the Black and brown kids in the Bronx. Like, I was fulfilled. So I did that for 5.5, 6 years. It was my kids who encouraged me to leave and follow my heart and follow my passion and go back to professional dancing for myself, because they were so inspired by me. They're like, you're getting these opportunities. Why aren't you doing them, Mr. J? And I'm like, no, because I need to be with y'all. And they checked me. They're like, no, that's your fear. You teach us to not to be subject to our own fears. So you need to get out there, Mr. J, and go for it. And then I just was like, you know what? You guys are right. I followed my heart, started working as a professional dancer, toured with Alicia Keys, et cetera, all around the world, Mariah Carey. And then I transitioned to coming to LA and was like, I'm really going to jump out there and stop doing all of that. And now I'm an act.
So I'm glad that you clarified that. So the work with Alicia Keys was while you were still in New York.
Yeah.
So in many ways, you were starting to, or you had established a lot of significant relationships in your East Coast connection that I'm assuming helped propel you to your West Coast, right?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate. I didn't come out here to LA super fresh, which is a hard thing for people to do, but it's also super hard to even be a successful professional top booking dancer in New York as well. So
let me ask you this before you go. What do you mean by super fresh? I know I might sound dated, but what do you mean you didn't come out there super fresh? Because you're looking pretty fresh to me now. So
well, what does that mean? I do got a little style, a little grace. No, but super fresh in terms of like to the business, to the industry, because obviously, in almost any industry, you have your entry level positions, but beyond that, a lot of it, and it's entertainment. It's about who you know. What I mean? It's about the relationships that you have garnered over your time pursuing. So I was able to come out here with a lot of firm foundation and good relationships. But the reality is, being the crazy dream chaser that I am, I didn't even utilize those relationships when I first came out here, because I said, I'm done all of that. It's time for me to do one of my other goals, which is be an actor. So I actually stopped all dance, all creative direction, all choreography, and spent 2 years pursuing acting, training in acting, et cetera, until I absolutely had no money and was like, Janelle, okay, let's rethink some of this. We can still stay in the passion, still stay in what we want to do, but maybe let's have a little more balance. So at that point, I faced myself again and said, okay, let's go back and do some more dancing and choreography while we maintain building as an actor. And then from there, the choreography literally just took off. Like I was an assistant and associate choreographer most of my time in New York. But then when I came out here and I was out here by myself, out of nowhere, it just really took off. And so, yeah.
So you face your second truth, right? The first is that this corporate America thing is just not for you.
Yeah.
You have a passion. And the second is, well, this passion, this dream I think I have about acting, I might need to readjust it and do some other things. Okay,
yeah.
So you made that transition, or you made that shift. It was just, it seemed like a shift into the choreography. So what happened then? And I'm curious because you hear so many stories about how difficult it is, even when you have the relationships and the connects, for Black and brown people to really break in Hollywood, in that industry, in a major way. So how were you able to do it? Was your diversity an asset, or you just went with what it is?
I just think that, I'm so thankful to be the spirit-led person that I am. I think that it was just the destiny of my life, because I ended up shortly after that being aligned with Janelle Monae. And I credit Janelle for so much in my life and so much in my mentality, because connecting with her, I really got to explore like the fullness of my creativity and of my mind. And she challenged me so much, and I grew so much working with her, that from that point forward, it seemed like opportunities just continued to present themselves, because with Janelle, that's when I started getting the opportunity to choreograph for the Grammys and choreograph on these major platforms. And so to your point, as a Black creative, we're not often given those opportunities often, right? And so once I was exposed via Janelle, then opportunities came, because people were like, wait, this guy is actually really good. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, you just haven't taken the time to see me prior to that. That was eye-opening for me. And from that point forward, it became part of my mission to make sure that I did as much as I could to give as many Black and brown creatives platforms to be seen, because I knew that for the most part, a lot of the reasons why we don't have the opportunities is because, one, we haven't been given the opportunities, and two, like we always say, representation matters, and there just hasn't been enough representation. And so from that point forward, it became literally one of my missions. And luckily, I'm connected to artists who are aligned with the same ideals and purposes. So like from Janelle Monae, she was always big on making sure that there were definitely enough Black and brown a part of anything that we were a part of. So, I was transformed, and I never changed from that point.
In the work that we do in alignment strategies, particularly in that corporate sector that you left, and we work with multicultural folks, particularly Black and brown. And this whole issue of showing up and being your authentic self is one that's talked about, that's a concern, and that they're trying to figure out just how do they show up? What does authentically being Black or authentically being Latinx really mean? And what does it really look like in this space? And so for you, even as a creative, that's the reality that you all are also facing.
It's so interesting that you say that, even in the corporate space, because you're so right. Like even in the creative space where you're supposed to be free to be yourself, like that is the key behind being creative and entertainment, right? It's you're free to be yourself. But I was able to realize when I did more self-reflection that I had, and I'm saying had, changed when I walked into certain rooms. I changed what was myself. Listen, I'm on today with this nice fedora and this hat, but most days I like my baseball cap backwards, or I might like a hoodie. I'm a dancer. I am a Black guy from the inner city. I like to talk with my hands. I like to be expressive, right? So it got to the point where I am sitting in these rooms with the head of the academy, right? Pitching ideas. And at one point I was trying to pitch the idea the way I think that you're supposed to pitch ideas. And eventually when I realized that I'm not giving them my fullest self, and my fullest self is so beautifully, uniquely made, and you're going to take this full Black man and all of his fullness and all of his Blackness, I started doing exactly what I'm doing with you right now, being my full self in these meetings, and it with, I didn't care who it was sitting across the table from me, I'm gonna be myself. And I actually had to check myself to say, Jemel, why were you not being yourself before? It was because I used to feel like I needed to be certain things to be accepted. And no, from that point forward, and especially 2020 and all that we went through in 2020, it further affirmed that I will never shirk and back away from the fullness of who I am and all my colorfulness.
Well, there was a piece of research that came out, and it was by Deloitte, and they talked about covering. And do you know that something like 72% of Black people, something like 75% of brown people felt like they had to cover, they had to hide who they were to be accepted. And so my question to you is, when you show up as your authentic self and you're in there pitching ideas and you're like, this is me, how does the other person, say of the white population or people who are there who look different from you, how do they respond to you?
It's interesting. I have observed different variations of responses. I've definitely observed the response of like, ooh, this is a lot. This is different. I've also observed the response of, I'm really entertained and into this. You know what I mean? But ultimately, I think what has happened is my pride and me being bold and unabashedly myself and standing in my truth and in my confidence has forced others to accept that. Now, regardless whether the job came to me or not, I'm not in there, and I'm not even there to try and assimilate to what they want me to be. I'm gonna just always be myself. And if this is the opportunity for me, then it'll be for me.
And clearly they'll remember you, even if you don't get the gig, they'll remember who you are. And plus, yes. You walk in now with a track record that's undeniable, right? And
I do.
So the boldness of all of that, the boldness,
it's undeniable,
that,
and I'm so proud.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I say it's the freedom of that. Can you imagine?
Absolutely. Oh, trust me, I'm living it. I now feel so much freer to actually just be myself. And so when I'm going in there and I'm pitching these big ideas, and I get it, it's like, this is the opening of the Oscars, like Dr. Weaver, that is the opening of the Oscars. Do you know how many Black people have ever had an opportunity to even be on the Oscars, but then to be choreographing and directing the artistic directing the opening of the Oscars, which to understand that, right, and to understand that, like, essentially they take so much pride in the opening because the opening is setting up the night. The opening decides whether people stay tuned for the night. So all these millions of dollars and this whole everything that they invest in it, it's reliant on how well this opening goes over. So, big love to the Academy for actually recognizing that it is time for expansion. It is time for far more inclusivity. And I can personally feel like I see the strides that are happening for that. And we are, as an industry, growing and evolving, and just as a people being seen more. So that makes me feel good. And it makes me feel good to be counted in that number and to be leading that charge and boldly, unabashedly down for it.
I just want to make sure that people know that your DNA line starts in DC. And we taped this show from Metro DC. And so you went from DC to New York to LA. So DC is claiming you, okay?
That's it. I mean, I am DC through and through.
DC. As we wrap up the show, really would like for you to, give some advice to people, to young people who are interested in breaking through the industry. What would you tell them?
Oh man, breaking through the industry or just pushing through in life, be yourself, follow your heart, listen to your heart, have a spiritual guidance there, particularly in the entertainment industry, which is what I can speak to the most. There's a lot of influence. There can be a lot of influence that moves you this and that. And if you don't know yourself.
Give me some examples of that influence.
Well, listen, I mean, again, I'm a spirit-led person. So I feel like sometimes you're in environments where you have different spirits of negative energy or different spirits of jealous energy or envious, whether it's from whomever it's from, you know what I mean? And so I think that a spiritual grounding for me has been the key to keeping me sound daily, and pushing through this and understanding that I am here for a purpose. And so if I stay focused in on my purpose, that's why I say it's important to be yourself, because you have your own specific calling. And the more you can stay tuned into that, you're not as influenced by the distractions. And those who want to be in the industry, you won't allow the industry to define you, but rather you are coming and presenting yourself to the industry.
Well, I just want to thank you for that, to, stay grounded and be yourself, understand what really excites you. You talked about your spiritual base. That's important, and obviously has influenced and kind of maintained you along the way, because you've made some pretty significant career moves and jumps that other people didn't understand, but you and God had a connection on that. So
that is so real, and it is literally the only way I've maintained, and people to this day still ask me, but how? Like, even down to how sometimes I have like 5 artists concurrently on tour and I gotta somehow be there everywhere. I don't even know how it ends up working out, but it always works out. And I think a lot of it is because I put God first in my decision making, and it ends up working out. So yeah.
Well, Jemel McWilliams, I just want to thank you so much for really providing the time to share your story, and not only how you challenge the adversities around really what is your direction in life, but really having the guts and the vision to move towards it. So on behalf of our Working It Out team and crew, we want to thank you again for being a part of this and sharing your story with our listeners. So I'm Dr. Vanessa Weaver. Have a safe, productive, and a be happy week.
Working It Out is brought to you by Alignment Strategies, a management consultancy with more than 3 decades of experience in diversity, equity and inclusion, and organizational development. To learn more, visit alignmentstrategies.com.
Got problems on the job, we're working it out. Workplace got you stressing, we're working it out. Yeah, we're working it out, working it out, working it out.